It's my
Yeah.
job to get in the heart and soul of
Yeah.
someone's perspective and bring that to life. And so I love getting in a mindset of something that's not second nature to me, thing I would normally do. It's really fun you get to try on
Yeah.
different careers or experiences by getting deep into their headspace so that you can bring it to life in a new way. I love that. Blend your ability to choose words well and concisely and using good insight. Combine that with strong concept and how you present all of that in a really appealing visual way.
Today, I will be interviewing Amy Kerr, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to work as a copywriter. So, Amy, thank you for joining me. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for
Good.
asking.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. Here at the Job Dictionary, we like to start off with kind of three rapid fire questions. So, Amy, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And when you were a kid, what did you want to do when you grew up?
Well, what I do, I am a creative copywriter, advertising copywriter, creative director. Sometimes I'll do consulting work and things like that. I'm here in Kansas City, in Waldo, to be exact, right part of the city. You'll probably hear sirens or police helicopters at some point. And when I was a kid, I think the first thing I ever wrote down was that I wanted to be a teacher. I think that was one of the only female jobs I'd seen modeled, to
Mm,
be honest. I've thought about that answer. I had a little Dr. Seuss
wow.
book, teacher. I think that's one of the only things I'd seen a woman do. Um,
Okay.
Abandoned that idea early on that that's not for me exactly, although I do like to share things I've learned and that's part of why I jumped on this opportunity. But um, not long after that, I decided, writer of some form. So things kind of went from there.
Great. And so let's dig into a little bit more of that. So, how long have you been working in this field and how did you get into it?
This is all I've ever done. I went to school for this. I may be getting ahead of myself on questions, but I have an actual advertising degree. Um, and so I guess I should go ahead and say, I mean, you're so young, like, why even try? I've been doing this for 30 years, a long, long
Wow.
time. Yep, yep. Um,
Yeah.
it's been awesome, but the only real switch I've had is that in 2017, I switched from working full time for one agency or one company to becoming a freelance writer. So they're kind of two
Okay.
phases. There's two different things I can kind of speak to really to your audience.
Yes.
Advertising, copywriting, but also working for yourself and doing it in a freelance
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. So, do you want to explain a little bit about how those two are different and why you decided to go freelance?
Yeah. Um, oh gosh, the second year I think into my career, one of my best friends got laid off, and I was crying
Okay.
in my
Mm,
boss's office, and so unfair. This is terrible. And he said, "Hey, listen, in advertising, it's not if you get laid off, it's when you get laid off. Uh,
right.
they
Okay.
hire up like a lot of companies do to be prepared for new clients and to take on all
Hmm.
that work. And then things change, a client goes away or agencies, just a lot of different reasons that they may need to, um, you know, uh, cut staff and so by the time I'd been laid off for the third time, one of those was
Okay.
from Hallmark corporate, which was just one of the most amazing experiences working at Hallmark. That was my time out of
Wow.
advertising proper, but I was in their advertising department to start with,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then developed product and even made a Hallmark movie. Yes, I'm responsible for a Hallmark
Wow.
movie, a Christmas movie.
Wow.
Yeah, I have an
That's
idea. I have
amazing.
page still somewhere, I think. Um, but after that third layoff, I tried to get another job and I almost did. It would have been a higher position than I'd ever had as an executive creative director. So in
Okay.
advertising, you can be a copywriter, you can be a junior copywriter, senior copywriter. Then you may be made an ACD or associate creative
Okay.
director, executive creative director. So this was for a
Okay.
chance to become an executive creative director. And I didn't get the job. I was wiped out from the process. And so I kind of put a note out on social media, said, hey, if anyone's got any leads, I would really appreciate it. And people are like, well, while you're looking, can you help us with this project? Or I need some help on this. And next thing you knew, I had enough of that when that company that didn't hire me came back and said, would you work for the person who you were
Mm,
trying to be? It was a very tough call, because it was going to be the largest offer I'd ever gotten, but I was already
Right.
so well on my way working here in my attic that I decided to just keep working for myself at that point. And it's been great ever since.
Great. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so diving into some of the niches or specialties that you could do as a copywriter, could you go into what those look like?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways. I thought about that. You can specialize in a certain subject matter. Some people are very, very good at writing for the medical field, or
Okay.
veterinary, or even fashion, or you name it. You could specialize in a certain subject. You could
Hmm.
specialize in a certain type of medium. You could be really,
Okay.
really great at social media. Someone else might be particularly good at TV. I came up in
Okay.
a time when success looked like getting to be one of the ones who got to go on TV shoots. We even would go to LA to do radio. That's how much
Wow.
money there was for production at that time. They'd fly us,
Okay.
the Midwest out to LA just to do a radio spot for clients like
Interesting.
Pizza Hut and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so you can be good at a certain format or a certain subject, or in my case, there's not too much that I haven't touched at this point, whether it's the topic or the type of communication.
Yeah. And so now what's your favorite type that you do, or what's the one that you do more often?
Yeah, favorite and more often is not always the same thing. It's a good
Yeah.
distinction, because
Yeah.
who doesn't want to do TV commercials, right? That's fun.
Right.
It's fun to tell. It's a mini film, and that's exciting.
Hmm.
Telling a story very quickly, and of
Yeah.
course having to convince someone of what you're trying to share. But entertainment is a great way to do that. You want your audience to be engaged. Um, so TV is always fun.
Yeah.
Anything with the storytelling aspect, I'm going to like more. Um,
Okay.
when you're a freelancer, you don't get the most prime projects tend to go to, if they have an in-house agency, it goes to those creatives,
Yeah.
which is completely fair. That's the way it should be. So by the time they come to a freelancer, a lot of times you're doing things that they've run out of time on. um,
Okay.
it could be just the scope is huge. It could be a complicated bunch of website pages. I'm working on a website project for a bank right now. It's just it's a lot of
Oh, okay.
technical details you have to get right, but I see it as a challenge to bring a little bit of humanity into anything that I write, whether
Yeah.
it's deeply personal or something with more parameters around it.
Oh, okay, cool. So now transitioning into kind of your daily work and your tasks, what is your schedule like? What tasks do you spend the majority of your day doing? And just tell me what's a day in Amy's life as a copywriter.
Yeah, so it's I think part of why I love it is that there is no typical day. I'm sure you've heard that a million times. um so I mean, I'll be like, I haven't written. I'm a writer who hasn't written. I'll be like, it's been a week. It's been all
Yeah.
kickoffs or waiting for feedback, and and more meetings where I'm learning more about a project or something like that. um but if I were to have a typical day, I would say it might include meeting with a client. One of the things I love about being a freelancer is that if I'm in a meeting, I typically very much need to be in that meeting. They are either telling me what they
Mm,
need, or I'm showing them what I did, explaining a little bit,
okay.
or hearing back from them, any kind of changes or additional insights that they would like me to include. Um, in agency life, and certainly at Hallmark, meetings can be a way of life, and you can be in a meeting and it's like, I could have stayed in bed and no one would have missed me. It's like a little overstaffed sometimes.
Mm,
Meeting becomes the job, and that's fine, and there are reasons for that. But I like that if I'm in a meeting, it's because I need to be there. So
you need
those
to be
are the
there, yeah.
meetings I have. There's something that we need to communicate with each other.
Yeah,
And so that's the kind of meeting I'll have, is something very important.
okay.
And then a lot of writing,
Yeah,
a lot of sitting here and sorting through whatever they gave me, doing research of my own to try to add more color, more detail, just understand
okay.
it better for myself, so that
Yeah,
I can better wrap my head around it and do a better job of presenting it back then to a consumer. So that's kind of the general idea of it.
yeah, interesting. And now, okay, let's backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's explain what copywriting is, because I know that I'm not too familiar with it, and maybe some of our listeners might not be that familiar with it too. So if you could explain what exactly it is, that would be great.
Yeah, no, and it's a good question because it's changed so much, right?
Okay.
When I got in the business, copywriting was very clear. There were print ads, and if you open a magazine, any words you see, the
Okay.
headline, the body copy, even a tagline, that was a
Mhm.
copywriter. The concept itself was something that the copywriter would have developed with their partner. Usually, copywriters, in the classic sense of advertising, a copywriter and an art director. Um, they're called art directors. They are not directors in the sense of like a creative director. It's a
Okay.
discrimination thing where a copywriter is just a writer, but an art person has director in their title. It's kind but it's true. They don't have that. You'll be partnered with someone who's got director in their title, but they are like you know, sleeves rolled up,
Interesting.
getting ideas created and then making them happen. Um, so you'll come up with concepts with your partner.
Okay.
So that could be a print ad, it could be a TV spot, a radio spot. Um, you know, and as my career has gone on, then of course it became, it could be brochures, it could be anything that any client
Okay.
wants to use to tell consumers about what their service or their product is.
Okay.
Um, you can talk to consumers. B2B means business to business.
Okay.
So, so maybe I'm trying to think of examples. I've written work for veterinarians, and they are talking to, or a veterinarian, group, and they may be
Hmm.
talking to veterinarians. That's not consumers.
Okay.
That's not a dog owner. They're trying to
Okay.
recruit new veterinarians to come and work, for their veterinarian group. So that's business to business. That's not a perfect
Okay.
example. That's an example. So it's just you trying to get people to get on board with your product or service.
Hmm.
Now it's changed over the years, right? Like if you could be a content creator, and so you may not be a
Okay.
trained writer in the classic sense, but you absolutely have the power to bring attention to a brand and really move the needle on sales for that brand.
Hmm.
So a person who can be an effective advertiser has definitely um, broadened in scope. But that person is not a copywriter. They're a content
Okay.
creator. It's not exactly
Okay.
this. They're kind of sisters in a way.
Okay. And now what makes someone a good copywriter? What are some topics or ideas that they have to be interested in order to be a good copywriter?
Yeah, well, you have to love words. You have to
Okay.
love language. I have been accused more than once of loving language too much. I'm like, this is just too much. And I'm like, well, I'm not a writer for nothing. I love words, so it can be hard to like narrow it down and just choose the best words, right? But you need to love language. You need to love natural language. Obviously the art of copywriting, you can't use those big words that no one
Those big words.
understands because then it's useless.
Hmm.
They don't know what
Hmm.
ideas. You need to be good at not just the words, but okay, create a character. What's this person in this radio spot gonna do? You need to be kind of
Okay.
funny. A lot of You don't have to be. If there's a lot of humor that comes up in advertising, but there are some people who do other things. If you really want to succeed in an agency, it helps to be, or just in just the classic sense of a copywriter, it helps to be um, good at imagining scenarios. So storytelling, sometimes it's
Okay.
going to be very warm, sometimes
Yeah.
it's to be funny. Um, it helps to be able to be really good at a headline where you can get the point across quickly, but make it interesting, right?
Hmm.
Communicate the client benefits um, in a succinct way that's also interesting. So you can
Yeah.
explain what something does, but that's not copywriting. That's just describing. So
Okay.
a copywriter is going to be able to breathe life into that and make you want to read it.
Okay. Okay. Amazing. And now, are there certain degrees or certifications that are required to be a copywriter? And if you could tell us about how, or well, we already talked about what you studied, but basically what education you have behind your copywriting.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, I got a degree in advertising. A lot of people come up through journalism and end up in copywriting. Journalism is definitely a common one.
Okay.
Creative writing, some people will really study creative writing specifically. I got actual marketing and advertising, classes under my
Okay.
belt as part of my degree.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, things like that. As far as a certification, there's nothing I've ever done. But you can also switch from something else altogether. You could have a business degree and just really have a knack for it. I know stories like that. and
Okay.
someone who's just a really, really good writer, really good with words, and kind of end up in this field that way too.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. And now for some tools or technologies, maybe even software or apps that you use, what do you always fall back on? What do you use on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's been another interesting thing that's changed. For my entire career, it was just Word, do a Word document, right?
Yeah.
One of the first times I was like, fine, I'll let go of that a little bit. And client wanted me to write in Google Docs. And I'm very shy about my words. I don't want you to see it until I feel like it's at a certain place in
Yeah.
development. I don't want you to see the ugly underbelly of my
Yeah.
ideas that aren't coming together. And his cursor, my client's cursor, was in there in the document. And he's like, I see you, haha. And I was just
Oh.
like, this is awful. This is terrible. It's like someone watching you get ready to go out, I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't get to see this yet. And so
Yeah.
I hated that, but I also understand that there are benefits to my clients to having those documents where we can, of course, go back and forth more easily. So my little thing is that I'll write it in Word until I'm happy. And then I'll go ahead and put it in there and I'm like, okay, now we can kind of begin that process. But
Yeah.
I still prefer to be in good old fashioned Word where I can control it a little bit and then I'll go ahead and share it
Okay.
as needed. The art directors are the ones who get all the fancy tools. They're the ones,
Okay.
with all the Photoshop and beyond and all of that stuff. But for writers, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And now, just out of curiosity, do you ever feel stuck or like you're not being creative enough? And how do you kind of get that inspiration?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I mean, walk away, you know.
Hmm.
I'll sit there and I'll realize I'm not making any progress. I'm just, yeah, no new ideas are coming. I'm not inspired
Yeah.
to feel it. I'll go walk the dog or, something like that. And that helps. If you can sleep on it, if you have the time, start fresh the next day, you can have a whole different
Okay.
perspective. Um, Snacks. I have these Dots pretzels, cinnamon pretzels that are ridiculous.
Um,
There's for me something about like a literally firing up if I'm desperate. I'm like, I don't have any more time to waste on this. I've got to
mm,
have some focus and get this done. There's something about that. I don't know if it's my ADHD brain, but really getting that sugar blast or that carb blast will
mhm,
really dial me in. Um, Movies and music and friends and
okay.
conversations always are good places to look for new ways of looking at the world. And that's really all
Yeah.
advertising is, you're
Yeah.
taking on the world through the eyes of your client.
Yeah. Those are some great tips. So now, how do you stay updated with the developments of copywriting?
It's a really good question because I was telling someone about this the other day. I said, I have
Okay.
a natural gift for writing. I've known that since no one ever accused me of a natural gift for science or math or anything like that. So I'm like, I guess writing.
Writing.
And so I've known that. And advertising came along for me in a pretty natural way. There can be
Okay.
something that happens though, if you're good at something early, enough to do it with some coaching, of course, from bosses along the way,
Hmm.
and working for myself. And I've been aware that, without openly, directly seeking out, new industry best practices or something, you could actually fall behind on accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I've been doing a little bit more of that just to make sure there's nothing I'm missing. And like I said, with the way social media works and content creators, that's such a unique thing. I don't want to be unaware of all of
Okay.
that, but I'm not going to all of a sudden, it's kind of like saying I'm going to create a viral video for a client. It doesn't work that way. You can do your best and you can make something
Yeah.
interesting, but we don't get to decide what a viral video.
What's gonna go viral? Yeah. Yeah.
That's for everyone else to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. So now these next set of questions are probably my favorite, and I'm excited to hear your answers. So as a copywriter, what parts of your job are the most exciting for you?
Mm. Um, it really is for me, um, when I have got everything I need, my candles lit, my music's on, and I've got a job that has a human element to it that I'm really going to get
Okay.
to dive in and do some storytelling. I
Okay.
really do love. And when I say storytelling, I mean make it human,
Yeah.
make it relatable. I wrote something for the skydiving.
Mm.
It was like the National Hall of Fame. I should know this. Um, they told me you made them cry. I'm so glad you found a skydiver to do this writing for us. And I'm like, oh, not in a million years. You couldn't shove me out of a plane. with 20 parachutes on. I wouldn't do it, but it's my
Yeah.
job to get in the heart and soul of
Yeah.
someone's perspective and bring that to life. And so I love getting in a mindset of something that's not second nature to me, nothing I would normally do. It's really fun to you get to try on
Yeah.
different careers or experiences by getting deep into their headspace so that you can bring it to life in a new way. I love that.
Yeah. And how do you do that? How do you exactly get into their headspace?
It's never been easier because now you can find YouTube videos where
Yeah.
someone explains how they felt, or you go skydiving with them, right? For example,
Hmm.
or you could find discussions, online, and you can
Okay.
listen. What kind of language do they use?
Okay.
What gets them most excited? When I first started in this business, I wrote an ad for a golf program, like
Okay.
what they'd hand you at a golf tournament, and a
Yeah.
business was sponsoring it. And I had to call a bunch of golf pros and say, because I don't golf, and I'm like, does this language make sense, or how would you describe
Yeah.
for this feeling? And so it was a lot harder to get the real language you'd want to use than it is now. There's so many
Interesting.
now, yeah.
Yeah. And so now kind of on the flip side, what is maybe emotionally challenging, maybe even boring or just hard as a copywriter?
Yeah, anything that's highly technical. And when I say technical, I don't mean I'm explaining, how to fix a tractor. I just mean, anything where there's a lot of restrictions, it's
Yeah.
medical, financial, health
Yeah.
insurance, anything like that, where you really don't get to use. I had someone say, no, we don't say smile. That's a little, I'm like, okay, this really is dry, this really is
Yeah.
tough. So you just have to look for the little places where you have to start to look at that more as solving a puzzle. What do they,
Okay.
how can I make it clear and concise? But those can be hhard for me to really, really
Yeah.
focus on. I have my little timer. That's when the timer
Okay.
will come into play where I'm like, okay, I can do this for 25 minutes and then I get to go, get something more
Yeah.
coffee. I just have
And
to push
so,
through on those.
yeah, I can imagine. And so
Yeah.
now, what do you think is something that people underestimate about being a copywriter?
Underestimate. Um, well, probably how many different things you have to but get to wrap your brain around.
Okay. Yeah.
I can have a conversation with anybody at this point. It's kind of shocking. My dad lives in a little town up in north central Kansas, and I'll
Okay.
go, and these crusty old guys, and I'm just telling them all about it. Oh, I set my timer here for 1 minute. There we go. Um, I can talk with them about all kinds of things. I've written about, farm equipment, and I've written for
Oh, wow.
animal health, and it doesn't make me an expert. It makes me
Mm,
just dangerous enough to get them talking, and they look at me and they go, oh, and so I think that if by the time you've done it for a while, like I have, you've had the chance to learn about so many different things. And I think that's a good thing, but you also need to be prepared to wrap your
yeah.
brain around so
Yeah.
many different things.
Yeah. And so now, what do people overestimate about being a copywriter?
Probably these days, if they know anything about it, they might think that they're going to get to have more adventures,
Mm,
than they do these days. My bosses back in the day, if they needed a beach, they would fly to Brazil. I mean, that's how much money was being thrown around at advertising.
right. Wow.
When I was younger, if we needed a beach, we went to Florida, but we were inland. It was some lake. I'm like, really? What are we doing? And now, you'd probably just ask AI to make you a beach. You just get on
Right.
GPT and say, give me a
Right.
beach, put a dog
Yeah.
on it, you'd be good to go. So you might not get to have quite as many in-person adventures as you might think, but it just depends. I don't get to travel too much as a freelancer, but a few weeks ago I
Okay.
went to Washington, DC with my clients. My first trip to DC, actually, it was great, and met with our clients there. That's an experiential client. They
Okay.
create spaces like
Okay.
meeting areas and maybe
Mm,
hospital waiting rooms and different things. And I've worked with them since I started freelancing, and so a little bit of travel there, and certainly a whole different experience than just doing advertising. I'm creating narratives
yeah.
and things to help prompt an entire physical experience. So
Yeah.
that's an exciting thing that's different from what
That's
I did
amazing.
for so long.
Yeah, cool. And now, Are there any busy seasons with copywriting? And if so, what season of the year
Yeah,
is your favorite? Yeah.
yeah. It can be busy toward the end of a year because
Okay.
people often the way business works, um, a client will have money that if they don't use it toward what it's been earmarked for, marketing or something like that, when they're looking at budgets the next year, they won't renew that same budget. And so you could
Okay.
actually lose money next year. So they will end up, a lot of times going ahead and pushing through on initiatives that they've been meaning to get to all year and haven't done.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
can happen. And so it's like here we are trying to
Yeah.
walk down and
Yeah.
oh boy, which is great, of course, but it can be the time of year we're all trying to start to plan holiday travel and things like that. And it can be one of the busiest times.
Yeah. And so now had to do some research before we got on this call, and I guess it might be different as a freelancer, but maybe we can talk about your past experience, or maybe even in your freelance experience. But according to Google, the average kind of salary for a copywriter is around 65,000. From your experience, do you think that's accurate? What do you think about that number?
I would think it would depend on, of course, what part of the country you're in and how long you've
Okay.
been doing it.
Yeah.
Are you saying that's like a starting salary kind of thing
Uh,
or
Apparently that's the
average?
average. That's
Okay.
the average.
Okay. Yeah, so it's hard to say, if you're just getting started, obviously that's going to be different
Yeah.
from, for me, I think it's very important, by the way, to talk about salaries. And I think it's especially
Hmm.
important for women to talk about salaries. Um, Silence means you don't know that you, Miranda, might be somewhere for 6 years
Yeah.
and you're making 80 and you feel pretty good about that. And then here comes a guy just out of school and they offer him 70. And if
Yeah.
you don't know, you don't know. And so I think it's
Yeah.
important. It protects the company to
Yeah.
not share salary information. I grew up in a time where they would try to teach it was almost immoral or graceless
Yeah.
to talk about salary. And I am in a minority of people who think it's very important to talk about money
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
empowers you to understand if you're being treated fairly or not.
Yeah.
You may be very
Completely
pleased
agree.
with where you are, or you may be like, oh, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel fair.
Right.
It can prompt important conversations. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just free to go. Maybe you need to go talk with your boss and say, help me understand what I can do to be
Yeah.
more valuable to this company. But at least you
Yeah.
have accurate information. So that's a
Yeah.
diatribe. Um, I I was very excited when I topped out over 6 figures. I don't remember how long
Wow.
I've been doing it. When I started going freelance, um, th- uh, the offer that I turned down, it was very difficult to turn this down. They offered me $150,000 as a creative director,
Wow.
and I turned
Wow.
it down. And I said, I think I can do better as a freelancer.
Yeah.
And I've had years where I've made over $200,000 as a freelancer.
Amazing.
I've made $1 million since I started in 2017,
Wow.
which comes out. I
Wow.
just figured it out before we started talking. I had a really, really bad year last year, and this year
Okay.
starting to pick up. That averages out to about $143,000 a year so far,
Okay.
right here in this
Wow.
attic. I've never worked harder in my life, by the way. Let's be very clear.
Okay.
On my own, I've
Okay.
never worked harder, but it's motivating, right? The harder I work, the more clients I've made happy, and the
Yeah.
more I get to send a bill to someone who hopefully will hire me again.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I find that rewarding to know
Hmm.
that the harder I work, the more money I will earn.
Yeah. That's amazing. And now, just out of curiosity again, do you have like a quota that you like to meet regarding clients, like monthly or quarterly? What does that look like? How many clients do you usually get?
Yeah, if I were a grown up who liked business, I would have a very good answer for you, but I just do things along. If they need me and I
Amazing.
can do it, I do
Yeah.
it. Usually I
Yeah.
say yes, 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 because there's almost always a way to work in another client. I've gotten good
Mm.
at kind of figuring it out and making time, and
Yeah.
it has to be right. They won't come back if I just squeeze them in, but then I deliver something that doesn't work for them. So I definitely have to make
Yeah.
sure I can do a good job for them. But generally I say yes. I don't say
Yeah.
yes. I feel like it's going to cramp um, the way I like to do business. I don't like to be on
Okay.
the hook as a freelancer, if that makes sense. Like if they're wanting just a
Okay.
certain number of hours from me every week, if I feel
Mm.
really locked down and I couldn't say yes to my niece saying, will you go to lunch with me or
Yeah.
that, well, now all of a sudden I'm back to having a job, except with no health insurance and no 401k
Mm.
and no PTO, so
Yeah,
if I work for myself, that freedom is the part that I do
needs to
get,
be
and I
there.
value that.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. And now, what are some of the biggest employers in this industry?
Oh, every town has agencies. Almost every
Okay.
town, even the little town my dad lives in.
Okay.
I noticed they have a little tiny agency. So, everyone's got things they need to say to people near them. So, there are some really big agencies in Kansas City. In fact, one of the local agencies is one of the ones you read about in the national trade papers and stuff. There are a few that are
Wow.
like, so,
Okay.
it's not like saying you want to get into packaged foods and you'd love to work for Kraft. I mean, there are big
Okay.
names, but
Yeah.
I hate to get into it because there are a lot of legends. Some are the legends that I grew
Yeah.
up with, who I still admire. Some are people I've worked for. Lots and lots of good agencies out there for sure.
Okay. Okay, good. And now, what are some of the current trends or challenges in the industry, and how do you see it evolving in 5 to 10 years? Specifically, you mentioned AI, and I wanted to get your take on how AI is influencing copywriting.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I'll never know for sure how many clients I lost in the last year and a half because they've decided they're going to kind of work with AI. Like I told you, there
Okay.
was a steep decline in my business right around the time AI was introduced. Do I think it was
Okay.
causal? To some extent it could have been. Was it
Okay.
corollary? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
lose a client because they hire um, someone permanently in-house and they just don't need outside support anymore. There are lots of reasons, but there
Yeah.
was timing that coincided. So it's hard not to think that there was at least some
Some. Yeah.
alignment, yeah, and cause. But I'll be the first to tell you, I use AI myself every day,
Okay.
personally, of course,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
professionally, I'll get a big tangled brief and a bunch of inputs, and I'll be like, okay, Chat GPT, can you turn this
Organized.
into a brief for me? Can you tell me
Yeah.
what they're really looking for? Like organize,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's very helpful. I'll write something and I have a bad habit of going too fast sometimes and repeating words. If it's a longer piece, especially, it can be hard to
Okay.
spot that.
Yeah.
I'll say, hey, point out places where I've repeated words or anything
Yeah.
else you see that I might want to take another
Yeah.
look. Right now, AI is crap at headlines, crap at true original storytelling.
Yeah.
Um, I've tried to use it to cheat, quite honestly, and it doesn't. I think it will. I think it will. I think we'll get there. We're not there yet.
Okay.
But what it is for me right now is a great partner. It can help me look at
Okay.
my work through a different angle,
Yeah.
clean it up, give me some really lousy, thought starters, but maybe one in there. Oh, kind of like there's something there.
Yeah.
Um, it's changing quickly.
Yeah.
A lot of us will be impacted by what it's capable of in the years to come.
Yeah. Completely agree. So
Mhm.
now we want to give our listeners some advice, and what better advice than that of a professional? So, Amy, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in copywriting do to set themselves apart from other copy writers? And then, if someone wants to make a pivot into this career, what do you suggest that they do?
It's very clear what you need to do. You need to have a portfolio of work that you can share.
Okay.
If there's
Okay.
something you want to do, do that. I think some young writers think they need to have things that have really been produced. So if it's the school newspaper, they'll use that, and that's fine. But I would rather see interesting, creative work that really shows what you're capable of that has never seen the
Okay.
light of day than see something that has been, we all know what's going on. We know that you could do something really clever and it
Yeah.
just doesn't get used or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, do not show me a condom ad. That is so, that's not clever. That's not
Yeah.
clever. Unless you show me a
Yeah.
condom ad, then I'm like, well, no one's ever done it like that before. Then show me the condom ad. I would rather see you create something engaging to sell, life insurance or car insurance, or
Yeah.
because that shows me that you can take a real world, product or situation and make it engaging and make it
Yeah.
interesting. But show a range, whatever, I've got a website now. Most people are going
Mhm.
to show it on a website. And back in the day, it was a paper portfolio. Um, create a website that shows a little bit about who you are, but also just shows how your mind works, right? Like what kinds of
Okay.
concepts you're capable of creating.
Okay. And now back to kind of the portfolio aspect. how many projects do you suggest that people have on there? And then how often would you suggest to update it?
Yeah, I think again, if you're in school, anyone who's going to be hiring you has to understand you don't have
Yeah.
a job, to draw from on all of that. So I would say if we're going to say a number, it's nice to, well, okay, I will be a little bit more clear on that. Most of the time you're going to be doing a campaign of some sort, right? Like
Okay.
even if it's a social media campaign, they're,
Yeah.
slightly different requirements for, different social media placements, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. So showing a little bit of that, but they're still pretty close. If you could show me a product or a service or whatever, and here's what I would do on Instagram, here's what I would do, you know, wherever you want it, maybe radio,
Yeah.
maybe a print ad or something like that. Think about what was the last time you bought something? Where all did you like, oh my gosh, they're in
Yeah.
all these places, a
Okay.
billboard, I don't know. Just show a few different ways that you would communicate that idea. You could show, a landing page or something like that. But show that how you would talk about that service or product across several places if you can.
Okay.
Do at least one campaign, right? So I can see how your mind works telling that message in different
Yeah.
formats.
Okay.
Um, but at least talk about, maybe a handful of goods and services and different things, do something
Yeah.
that's interesting to you, you know,
Okay.
but don't make it all fluffy because who doesn't want to talk about the fluffy stuff? We need to talk about the people with the money aren't always
Yeah.
who they're selling insurance and medical care.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now, what are some books, resources, or programs that you would recommend someone look into if they're wanting to become a copywriter?
Yeah. Honestly, I think I keep saying honestly, that's a tick. Just honestly, I think there's kind of a thing that's happened more in recent years where even a copywriter is going to be very good. And I probably someone your age, this is already kind of happening, but the design stuff was always so separate when I was younger. And it's
Okay.
really so blended now. I would say go ahead and get
Okay.
very, very comfortable with design. I wish I would have done that a
Okay.
long time ago.
Okay.
Honestly, more than God, I did it again. More than their book or anything like that, I would say blend your ability to choose words well and concisely and using good insights. Combine that with strong concept and how you present all of that in a really appealing visual way. It's not required. There are still designers and writers, but it doesn't
Okay.
it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of
Yeah.
ability. I'm strong visually, but I can't design. I leave that to
Yeah.
partners, but it's nice to know what you're talking about, especially if you have aspirations to become a creative director one day. You never know
Okay.
what you're looking at and how to direct, an art director.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. And then
well as
so, yeah. Yeah. So now, if you could talk to your younger self and give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would probably be to take a breath, listen more. If someone's coming to you with something that they want done differently on your work, they've been doing this, they know what they're talking about. This is not a court of law. Listen,
Mhm.
you're not going to run out of creativity. Just go back and see what else you can do, and don't
Yeah.
don't take it personally.
Great advice. So yeah, so finally, where can people reach out to you if they want to follow along with you, or even just reach out to connect? Could you
Yeah,
share?
I'm Amy Cecil Kerr on LinkedIn, and you can
Okay,
see my work at amykerrcreative.com online and see a little bit of what I've been up to.
great. And we'll make sure to post that and tag you when this podcast gets posted. But yeah, Amy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience as a copywriter. Your insight is greatly appreciated, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to have loved this episode. Thank you so much.
I hope it's helpful. Thank you for doing this.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we could better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!